What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave. I wanted to give you guys my first thoughts on this Edgar Berlanga Hamzah Sheeraz fight. I saw the press conference and I thought it was funny. I think, by the way, I did a video on Shakur Stevenson and William Zepeda. Check that out. I did that yesterday, which is going to be on the same card. This is on July 12th on the zone. I said I was trying to decide whether I was going to go or not because it's in New York. I kind of want to go to this fight. But the Katie Taylor Man of Serrano trilogy is the day before, and I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do with this. If I'm going to go to both fights, if I'm going to go to one of them, but I'm probably most likely going to go to at least one of these fights. I haven't decided on which fight yet. I like this card better, though. I like this card better than the other card, but I like the Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano fight. I think that's the best fight. I like this card. It's just pretty solid card. But yo, I saw the press conference, right? And I was thinking, Edgar Berlanga is doing a good job embracing the villain role. I think he understands that a lot of people don't like him, and people are usually rooting against him outside of Puerto Ricans from New York, or maybe Puerto Ricans in general, but definitely New Yorkers. But outside of New York, he's not a very liked guy. I mean, this just based on what I'm getting and what I'm seeing like online and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think. I think he's well. I just think that he's embracing the villain role very well. You know what I mean? You go on a stage, you acting like a thug. I know people are not really comfortable with him saying the N word as much as he said, especially if you're not from New York. Uh, I just think that he's going up there. He's being more aggressive. He's not trying to be humble. He's simulating a gunshot to Hamza's face. Like, he's just being what people don't like. And to be honest, I think he should. I think he should. I think at the end of the day, when he was going on that long stretch of just knocking out guys in the first round, right? Once that stopped and he started just boxing and getting decision wins, people were overly critical of him. Even I was a little critical of him, you know what I'm saying? Because I wanted to see how he would look if he's forced to box a little longer and he can just knock out his opponent in the first round. So he started to struggle a little bit. I know he got dropped, maybe once or twice, and he ended up getting the Canelo fight, which a lot of people really didn't want because everybody was pushing the David Benavidez fight, right? So when he got the fight, people were like, "Oh, this gonna be easy fight." He wasn't really, worth it. But I will say, right before that fight, he started to show improvements. I remember doing a breakdown for this fight, and I think it was the Patrick McRory fight, maybe even the Jason Quigley fight, but I know definitely the Patrick McRory fight. He started to look like his boxing polished up a little bit. So when he went into the Canelo fight, even though he clearly lost the Canelo fight, he did much better than expected. And I was surprised to see how much of a size advantage he had over Canelo. I mean, he looked really, really big. So I think he's doing what he needs to do to keep people watching because now it's at a point where he's finding a guy that's the completely opposite in Hamzah Sheeraz, who's like a gentleman, classy guys, always wearing sharp suits, very humble guy, very likable guy in his interviews. Um, but he's been catching a lot of fire because of his recent draw, which I thought he clearly lost. I mean, we covered that fight live. Though he clearly lost, I know he injured his hand in the fight, but we didn't see much from him. I thought Carlos Adames clearly won the fight. So now Hamza is moving up to 168 because Hamza was at 160 his career. And, there's a lot of changes here. Now, we know that he's a big dude. I don't even know how he was able to make 160 because he's like 6'4", right? So now he can, he could be less drained, he could be stronger, probably better punch resistance, more energy, maybe even greater power. So that's a good thing for Hamza. He's brought Andy Lee to camp now. He's training with him, which is great. Big respect to Andy Lee, like Andy Lee as a fighter and even as a trainer. So I'm curious to see how Hamza looks in this fight. I definitely think Hamza needs to be the boxer, because I think if this is a boxing match, he has a shot. But if it goes into a complete slugfest, I'm leading towards Edgar Berlanga. And when I say that, I do think Edgar has improved on his boxing. So when I say that, I'm just comparing slugger to slugger versus boxer to boxer. And I think if Hamza took the approach where he's a little cautious because he hasn't shown to be having a great chin himself, you know. I know Ammo was able to hurt him, you know. Carlos Adames was able to rough him up a little bit. I believe he's been down too early in his career. I'm not saying that he's chinny or anything like that, but I think Edgar has more than enough power to hurt him. And I think Edgar is really serious about trying to knock him out. You know, Edgar is very confident in himself right now because of that Canelo fight. Because it's still win in his eyes, even though he lost, it's still a win because of how he performed versus how people expected him to perform. Yeah, he got dropped, but he got up, gave us some good rounds, and didn't bow down from Canelo. I actually respect him for that, because he could have just ran around the ring for the rest of the remainder of the fight. He stood his ground and he talked shit to Canelo the entire fight. So I know he's not a likable guy, arrogant dude from Brooklyn, and I get it, but it's working for him, and to be honest, Shakur Zapata is the bigger fight for me. Me personally, I think that's the bigger fight. That's the fight I want to see more. But after looking at the press conference, I was like, all right, now I see why this is the main event and this being the co-main event. Because after the antics and stuff like that, people are definitely expecting a knockout on that fight. Versus Shakur and Zapata, it's a higher level fight in my opinion because both of them are a little bit more higher to me as far as what they've proven to do. Well, you know, I mean, arguably, Shakur is in a different space. I think the rest of them is probably all around the same space, right? Cepeda, Hamza, Berlanga. I would say, and now I see why that was the main event. Because, Edgar is going to do something that many fighters can do, and that's sell a fight. And that kind of reminds me of why Gerald Miller always get the phone calls. You know what I mean? Because I know they're risking everything. This guy might possibly be a PEDs. Is he going to come in shape? Regardless of what he looks like in the ring, he knows how to sell a fight. And this is why he keeps getting calls for fights. Um, so this fight, I'm leaning towards Berlanga only because I know he can hurt Hamza. Hamza, not sure what he can do at 168. He's not just moving up to 168, and I know he's taller than Berlanga, but Berlanga is a big guy at 168. I mean, he looked like the biggest guy that Canelo fought when they were actually in the ring together. And like I know he fought Bivol and Kovalev, who are 175 pounders. But Berlanga that night looked like the biggest guy that Canelo fought to me. Let me know what you think in the comments. And I know everything is not based on size. We got to address skills and all that, but Hamza is still a bit green. And you may say that against Berlanga about Berlanga, but at least he fought Canelo. At least he was able to get up, keep pushing, and finish the fight. And also won a few rounds, maybe. You know what I mean? So I like the fight. I actually think this is a huge risk for Hamzah. I'm surprised he's taking it at the time that he's taking it, coming off his worst performance. But he may be looking at it as, I'm trying to get that respect. If I beat this guy that everybody hates, at least I'm trying to get the respect back from the general boxing public who have written me off because of that last performance, you know? And he's going right back in the fire and going to a new division, which I think the division is wide open right now because depending on how long Canelo's going to be around, we know he's fighting Terrence Crawford, but who knows? Who knows Canelo if Canelo beats Crawford? Who knows who Canelo's going to fight next year? It could be Chris Eubank. It could be Hamza if he is to look good in this fight. So it's a risky situation. But if Hamza win this fight, he's gonna definitely get rewarded with another big fight, and he'll definitely become a name for real. You know, um, but I'm leaning towards Berlanga for now. For now, all right. But I'll definitely do a breakdown as we get closer to the fight. All right, I'll see you guys soon, man. Knicks game's coming on shortly, so you already know. I'll see y'all later. Peace.